In this lesson, we'll learn how we can color the skin of our photo-manipulated fantasy character to look more visually interesting. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so now that we've incorporated the textures that we want into the skin, we're ready to also add in some color as well. So as I've mentioned before in this course, I'm imagining the environment in which our fantasy character exists in. So he's a goblin-like, orc-like character, right? So he probably lives in a very subterranean environment. He probably doesn't get exposed to sunlight very much. So I'm imagining his skin being kind of green with a little bit of blue kind of worked in there, real subtle like. So that's what we're going to focus on, is adding color into the head as well as the neck. Again, at this point, we're pretty well unifying everything on this entire piece here. So let's go ahead and have a look at our layers panel once again, and we have a new group which we'll be working in titled Skin Color. We're starting with a new merged copy of the head, and just as before, I've added a layer mask. That way, as we add this color, it will only affect the head in our skin color group. Okay, so what we want to do first is make a new layer. All right, and we'll go ahead and copy up our layer mask. All right, and let's go ahead and title this layer Skin Color. All right, excellent. And let's now go ahead and change the blend mode to color. Now this is probably off your screen, but it's the second one from the bottom of this drop down. Okay, and this is going to prove pivotal as we add the color to his skin. The color blend mode really is going to allow everything else to show through without losing any detail. We don't want to lose all the detail of those skin pores and the textures that we've spent so much time maintaining and adding in. Okay, great. So now we want to go over here to our tool panel and grab our paint bucket tool. All right, so it's about a little ways halfway down, past halfway down there. And let's go ahead, again, we want to add in kind of a green color. So we can come over here to our swatches panel. We have just some different green swatches that we could easily grab from. We might kind of try this one right here. It's kind of a darker kind of pea green. Okay, so we're just going to drop that over our entire head here, and as you can see, the layer mask is working its magic. That green isn't going anywhere except onto the head. Now that's looking crazy intense. That's way too green. He looks just way overly just saturated with green, and we don't really want that. So what we're going to do now is come over to our opacity in our layers panel, and let's bring it down to right around, let's say 40%. Let's kind of see what 40% gives us. All right, so that feels a lot nicer. So we're kind of weaving that green in with the original skin color that we had to work with. All right, very cool. Okay, so now what we want to do is grab our eraser tool, and we're going to go ahead and right-click, bringing up our brush preset picker, and let's just go with this soft round brush. Again, just the default brushes that come with Photoshop. We'll kind of size it up, come over here to our brush panel, turn on transfer, and again, just as before, making sure we have our controls for opacity and flow set to pen pressure, since we are using a Wacom stylus in this case. So what I want to do now is kind of really add to the character in putting this color on his skin. I don't want it just to be all uniformly green, right? We want to kind of give him a nasty, kind of sickly look almost, especially around the eyes and a little bit in the ears as well. And of course, I don't really want the green integrated into the inside of his mouth. All right, so let's go ahead and just kind of focus on kind of dropping down that eraser right over his eyes. And man, that already adds a lot to his character right there. And just kind of getting in there and getting rid of all that green just kind of on the eyes. Just right there on the actual iris. And then we're going to basically do the same thing on the opposite eye. Just erasing away that green that we use the paint bucket tool to drop on there. Very cool. Now we can kind of come over here to the ears as well. And we'll kind of have the inside of his ears still be kind of that original skin color. Kind of add a little bit of warmth into the ears. So we don't want everything to feel very cold. We want to have kind of a nice balance of kind of warm and cool colors. And that just really makes for something that's more visually engaging to the viewer. And of course we'll come in here into the mouth and just remove all that green. I want his mouth, as I mentioned early on when we were working on the mouth, I want it to be very striking. So as a result, I want it to be very warm. And we'll go ahead and take out the green off the lips as well. So this is looking awesome. He just looks so much more vicious and scary looking than he did before. And so we can just make a quick comparison and just see what little we've done in just 6 minutes. Really cool, really effective. All right, so the next thing I want to do is make a new layer. And we're going to go ahead again and copy up our layer mask. All right. And we're going to title this layer Shadow Color. Okay. All right. So we've got our new layer there titled Shadow Color. So what we're going to do now is work in an additional color. We're going to work in some blue. Now that we've added all this green, it does kind of flatten him out just a little bit. It's very much an analogous thing where we have basically green in all of our different values that make up the head, okay? And so we just kind of want to work in additional color just kind of into these shadows right in here. That way it's not just all green. It just kind of adds just a little bit of depth. Nice to have just a little bit more than one color in the skin itself, okay? So we're going to come up here to our swatches panel, and we can just grab like this blue right here, this pure blue. I think will work fine. And we'll continue on basically working that in. Now what I want to do, instead of using color this time, I'm going to try soft light and kind of see what that gives for me. So this time we're just going to grab our brush tool. We'll right click, bringing up our brush preset picker. We'll grab a soft round brush, size it way up here. And again, just as before, turning on transfer so we can have pressure sensitivity for opacity and flow. So using that soft light basically allows us to very gently work in some of this blue just kind of into the shadow areas. And it just kind of adds a little bit of dimension, a little bit of depth. That way it's not all just one flat green color on his skin. So we're just kind of coming around, just kind of lightly hitting some of these different areas, just kind of working in a little bit of blue, a little bit of variety in there. And that's looking really nice. Okay, now let's go ahead and jump back down to our skin color, and I'm noticing something else that we should actually really kind of make pop out, and it's those veins. We kind of erased away the eyes, areas around the eyes and in the ears, and especially the mouth. But now I'm kind of noticing these veins just as I was kind of painting up there on the forehead. So what a great idea that would be to kind of erase away using our soft round brush and put a little bit of blood in those veins, essentially. Just very lightly. I don't want to go too strong with the amount of pressure I'm applying with my stylus. And maybe a little bit on those blotches as well on the skin. I think that adds a lot to the character. Very, very cool. Looking excellent. All right, let's go ahead and work on the neck now. So we're going to basically come down here to our neck group, and let's take the exact same process. So we're going to go ahead and create a new layer. We'll copy up the layer mask which we've created in the previous lesson. Okay? And we're going to call this layer color. Okay, great. And of course we want to set this to color for the blend mode. Again, that's a pivotal thing that you need to do in dropping in that color so we don't lose any kind of detail underneath of that color. All right, and we'll basically use the same green as before. And since we basically used a 40% opacity on the head. Let's do the same thing on the neck. So we'll go with 40% for the opacity for the color to the neck. Now let's grab our paint bucket tool and just drop that green on, and it's already working very nicely with the head. Okay, great. Now let's go ahead and grab our eraser tool, and we'll kind of erase away just some of these veins where the green is covering them. I think that'll work nicely with what we did up there on the forehead. It's just kind of coming around some of these different areas here, just very lightly hitting them with the soft round brush, just taking away some of that green. And again, it just kind of creates a nice visual contrast between this kind of very cool color that we've created his skin and just having little bits of warmth here and there. Very visually striking doing that. Okay, cool. And then we want to do the same thing we did, just kind of work in a little bit of blue as well. Now, before we work in that blue, I'm noticing something just as we added in this green on the neck. If you recall, we stretched out his jaw, extending it very far down. As a result, there needs to be a kind of a change here with the shadow itself, okay? So before we work in any of that blue with the soft light blend mode, let's kind of very lightly paint in a shadow. So we're going to grab our brush tool, and we're going to continue to use a soft round brush. Let's go ahead and make a new layer. All right. And we're going to go ahead and copy up our layer mask. And we'll just title this layer Shadow. Okay, so now that we have our layer created for the shadow that we're going to add on the neck, let's just go ahead and sample just kind of from a darker area. And using a soft round brush, we'll kind of start to paint in just kind of a shadow based off of that jaw extending further down. Now, what I might want to do is use a different blend mode instead of just normal. So let's kind of see what multiply gives us. So just kind of bringing that shadow around there. Very nice. That's feeling a little bit better. Feels like that kind of integrates the neck in with the head just a little bit more nicely. And we can always kind of come in and adjust the overall opacity if we deem it necessary. Okay, now let's go ahead and create that shadow color layer using soft light as our blend mode. So again, making a new layer, bringing up our layer mask, and we'll call this shadow color. Okay, great. Now let's go up here to our blend mode, and just as before, we'll use soft light, and we'll grab that blue that we used before, and just using our soft round brush, we'll kind of just bring in just a little bit of blue into the skin as well. And that's looking a little intense, so we can always kind of take a step back, kind of press just a little bit too hard with my stylus, but that's okay. And as I do this, I may want to come back to that shadow layer. Let's bring down the opacity just a little bit more. All right, excellent. So what we're going to focus on in the next lesson is just kind of working our way all around the head now, just adding some additional visual touch-ups and elements. So stick around and we'll see you in the next lesson.